Welcome back to How China Works, part of the Migration Media Network. I'm Brendan Davis, your host.
And I'm YINGYING, your other host.
And today's topic is all about etiquette, specifically name card etiquette and WeChat game at the business meeting.
I need to practice this one. Ethics.
It's kind of hard to say, yeah?
Yeah, I know that it refers to having good manners. We have our own words for that in Chinese too, of course.
Well, if you tell me about the relevant Chinese concept, we can use that one instead.
Okay, I know just the one.
Let me guess. It's probably from Confucius, right?
Exactly.
Great, let's go.
So the main concept that relates to good manners is derived from Confucius, which we will talk a lot about this when we go through this series.
Right. We've talked about it a lot already between us off the mic and how it relates to all these various topics we're going to get into.
It really does. So there is this one aspect that is directly related to, how do you say it?
Etiquette.
Great. So I'll introduce the origins of that li to you a little bit now. Li originally refers to the tools used in the sacrificial spiritual ceremonies performed when someone died in their funeral rites to show respect to the ghost and the heavens. Later, the meaning of li evolves to refer to the proper way to conduct other sorts of official ceremonies, not just funerals. And eventually, li came to mean basically the same thing as you mean by that E word, referring to the moral guidelines regarding the right behavior in all kinds of situations. Among other things, it relates to how to deal with issues of hierarchy, which is another topic we'll come back to again and again.
That makes sense. And since using a person's correct title when addressing them shows respect, getting that right requires a proper understanding of hierarchy like you mentioned. So that brings us to the Chinese name card ritual. This is still a pretty big deal, yeah?
Yes, having good name card game is very important. Getting that ritual right depends on who and where you are and what the occasion is. I know that you're pro with it right now, but how did you learn it?
I actually learned it years ago in Los Angeles, not related to China, but related to your neighbor country to the east, Korea. I had this friend, Brad, and he had this Korean billionaire friend, and that guy was talking to us about financing this big movie project, me and my U.S. partners. And this guy rolls in on one of his private jets with a 7-deep posse of people, and of course, they all had an English name, and they all had business cards ready to throw at me.
Wow. How do you accept these cards in the West?
Well, in the West, we might take it with one hand and you kind of casually glance at it before you put it in your pocket or your briefcase, and you're still talking, of course, the whole time. But as you know very well, in Asia, you take the card with two hands, very respectfully, the bottom corners, and you look at it. You look at the front really thoughtfully, then you turn it over and you look at the back, and then you turn it back around and you really read it. Or if it's actually not in English, you study the characters at least. And this is really crucial. Allow yourself to be subtly impressed with some aspect of the card, with the design at the very least, or even better, with the title of the person as you read it, if it's in a language that you can read.
Speaking of titles, it's so important because the fact that a foreigner is able to address a Chinese, let's say a partner or potential client, in the way of combining both surname and his or her title indicates a lot in understanding Chinese culture. For example, if someone look at my business card and realize that I'm a founder or chairman or something, deputy, whatever, he would call me Li Zong, means Chairman Li or
Sounds
President
very
Li.
fancy.
I would feel honored or respected. And it happens everywhere in China, even now.
And, doing these things right is a really easy way to make a great first impression. And actually, to that end, one last tip that Brad taught me that's really useful, I think you're going to like this, is that especially when you have a big crowd of new people you just met, to help keep everybody straight, if you take the cards and you kind of lay them out in front of you, in this case like in a semicircle where it's between you and the person, this way it's really easy to remember who everybody is because you can just kind of glance down and see their name right there on the card.
Wow, that's a great advice.
Yeah.
What a cool little hack. I have to use that one too. Thanks, Brad, whoever you are.
I'll be sure to tell him. And of course, a lot of foreigners already know that how you give your business or name card in Asia is a very specific thing. But what you may not know is that in China in particular, WeChat is really updating or even replacing this custom in all but really the most formal of circumstances.
加个微信吧 means let's add each other on WeChat.
Okay.
And honestly, it's pretty impressive to be asked by a foreigner for my WeChat up front. It shows they're already at least a little China savvy.
Hey, I already have yours, but can I have it again?
Oh, sure thing.
All right. Something else that's funny is that when I've been traveling in rural areas, I've surprised more than a few local folks when they ask me that, because they might say something like, let me be one of your first WeChat friends. And then I show them that, I've actually got 1,000 or so contacts already because I've been here a while.
Sure. Everyone loves it because WeChat is an all-in-one app versus the various situations outside China that require you to bounce between Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and others. Depending on the type of communication you want to have and who it's with. China, being WeChat-centric, means that regardless of circumstances, whether it's business, personal, or otherwise, if you have their WeChat, you can reach them fast and direct.
And this is in part because the Western world especially first got online with PCs and is used to going online in multiple ways now for years. But for a lot of reasons, China really has developed as a mobile-first society. And of course, this has even bigger implications than just the obvious technological ones. Where should we even start to talk about all of this?
Several points to consider here, mostly related to the financial realities of the different stages of development in China, which often have geographical aspects as well. Although cities like Beijing and Shanghai are very modern now, China in general was not anywhere near as developed it is today during the initial rise of PCs. The major cities becoming so modern has happened as mobile internet and smartphone became the dominant platform worldwide. And throughout rural China, people are still coming online for the first time ever in huge numbers here. And they are doing so in an environment where everyone is already mobile-oriented. So since WeChat is optimized for that platform versus a laptop or PC, it's become the environment of choice for people to communicate.
And there are deeper cultural factors to consider too, yes?
Right. Sociologists will tell you that China is an acquaintance society versus a stranger society, like the West. You know what that means?
I have a pretty decent idea, I think. An acquaintance society is sort of what it sounds like in both cases. An acquaintance society is one where looser bonds are made, casual bonds are made without a lot of effort or a high barrier, but a stranger society is where you really keep things super, super private. There's not the same emphasis on privacy here, and so the walls are a bit lower in China. But like in the West, if some random person adds your WeChat, your personal private WeChat, you don't know them, it seems kind of strange. But, I've got plenty of like Didi and taxi drivers WeChats in my phone right now.
Well, that's a different culture.
Totally.
So the act of connecting on WeChat isn't just convenient. It also helps to build guanxi, which is maybe the most important social benefit of all.
And Lord knows that we will have a lot more to say about guanxi as we go, but for now, it essentially relates to building strong relationships with other people and then leveraging those relationships to make your life better and make things go smoother for everybody. Now, that's a pretty huge generalization, but it's close enough, right?
It's not too bad for now. Just know that using WeChat is a helpful way to understand Chinese culture. So if you're trying to get familiar with China, it's a great place to start.
So even if you do a very formal name card exchange at the beginning of a meeting or a dinner, make sure that at the very end of things, if everything went well, you make sure to offer to add the other people on WeChat too. All right, so far this week we've learned a little about formal drinking rituals, plus what's important about who sits where and why at a Chinese business dinner.
Today, we've learned how to successfully connect with people at a business dinner or other meetings, and enough about Li to help us begin to understand its major importance in Chinese society.
We touched on acquaintance versus stranger societies and how WeChat helps to build guanxi, which, like Li, are all concepts we will return to again and again to learn even more.
Tomorrow, we'll talk about eating and what's considered good table manners in China. And on Friday, we'll wrap it all up by talking about what happens after the end of the meal.
Yep, the choice of either getting some sleep or going out to KTV.
That will be a lot of fun.
Yes, it will. Don't forget that if you're enjoying the show, we'd really appreciate it if you tell a friend, share the show, and connect with us on social media.
And most of all, please subscribe to the show in iTunes and wherever you get your podcasts.
That helps us very much because a higher ranking in all the podcast stores helps us get discovered by even more cool people like you.
Thanks again for listening. I'm Yingying Li.
And I'm Brendan Davis.
And we'll see you again tomorrow on How China Works.